Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show. All right, Lindsie Vizethann, I'm so happy to have you on today. We're going to be talking about PCOS in particular, which is a topic I have not gone into on this podcast and your area of expertise. But before we go there, I'd love to have you tell me a little bit about you, your background, how you got into the holistic health space.
Yeah, so I was in healthcare for years. I was a CNA, and even graduating high school, I knew like I was going to be a nurse and that whole track. And then I was a nurse for like 13 years. So I mean almost 20 years. I was a CNA in high school even, so almost
Wow.
20 years in the healthcare space. And I think I just saw the changes that were happening. It was a lot of do more with less, but still
Mhm.
make the patient feel, you know, like they should be here and they're cared for and all this. And I couldn't do that anymore. And then the other side of that was also like for me, I was always the fitness person. I was not
Mm,
necessarily the nutrition person that I am right now. But I was
yeah.
always like, why does people keep coming back? Like if they just went home and like worked out or, took better care of themselves, what are we doing? And so I was a member of a gym at the time and like fell in love with that whole concept, met some amazing people there. And one day just decided to take a leap of faith and rope my now husband into opening up a gym. I was like, let's just make a call and see what happens. So we opened up a gym. So I mean, I walked away from all of it, and I mean, couldn't be happier because it's like everything has just kind of led me to this point. But we had the gym for about 5 years, and and yeah, I mean, changed lives in a whole different way, the way that I felt very passionate about. But that, during that time, I had my own health struggles.
Mm.
Everything kind of came to a head. And looking back, like all of those long nursing days and weird hours and just eating very, very poorly because I just didn't know. I think everything just kind of came to a head, and I had my own wake up call with basically being diagnosed with lupus. And now I know that I probably had some celiac stuff going on at the time as well. And so I had to totally, change my whole way of thinking. So even though I always felt like fitness was the way to go, I started realizing how much nutrition played a role in all of that and healing and truly healing. And now that's what I get to do. After we sold the gym, I've been a health and nutrition coach now for a few years, and yeah, it's been amazing. Like I said, everything just kind of like, you learn from one thing and you build, and it's just kind of led me to this point.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I feel like our journeys parallel a little bit. I didn't work as like say like a nurse prior to getting into the holistic health space, but did work for the government. Certainly worked kind of the day job, if you will, right? And then, like you, started out on a different track as well, just as a body
Mhm.
work therapist. Still do that work to a point, but like eventually came into the nutrition space, kind of like you. And I think for
Yeah.
a lot of us, it is that health breakdown situation that really plants the seed. And, similar to you, having that interest in being a athlete, like as a teenager and into college
Hmm.
as well, like I thought really fitness was the primary thing that would like,
Exactly.
yeah, give you
Yeah.
health and even made the mistake for a long time eating a vegetarian diet. And again, no judgment on that, but for me, that definitely was a foundational like poor health sort of set factor that I
Hmm.
did not realize at the time. And so I think it's like you said, you just sort of take that path and it opens up all these doors and you end up going different places with it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I feel like too, around that time too, it was a lot about working out and all these new fitness concepts kind of, coming out. but now I feel like even just in general, there's a shift in momentum to focus on, more nutrition and other, alternative practices
Yeah.
to truly heal as well. So,
Yeah, and I think we can dive into the whole fitness aspect even as we go through this conversation because I'd
mm.
love to get your thoughts on. I think I've had maybe a few of my guests speak on the topic of like even how like overzealousness with fitness and overdoing fitness, right, can
Oh,
actually
yes.
detract from health. There's like that balance you want to find there, right? So
Yeah.
so maybe we can tie that into the whole topic of PCOS as we go through this
Oh, for sure.
conversation. But before we go there, I think what everybody would be very curious to know, I know I am, is how did you end up working with PCOS in specific, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I was an ER nurse, and so I saw a lot of women with PCOS.
Wow.
And I saw just the struggles, that they were going through coming into the ER, especially, they're in pain and a lot of them had, kind of the classic, symptoms that we see a lot of the times, being overweight, the acne,
Yeah.
dealing with some body image issues, that type of thing. Um, and so as I have evolved in my health coaching practice, I really wanted to drill in and see like, what's the group that really needs me? And
Hmm.
also my very first client ended up having that's not reason the reason that she started working with me was PCOS, but we
Yeah.
did fix her symptoms of PCOS along the way with everything we were doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the more research I did, I just think it's a very neglected community. I
Hmm.
think there are a lot more women out there that have it that aren't diagnosed, and at this point, who cares if you have a diagnosis, really? I mean, if you're having those
Right.
symptoms, there's still things that can be done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a community that really needs the holistic, touch and just to be more aware of what that they can reverse their symptoms and they can have better days. And just because they get this diagnosis, they're not limited. It's not, a life sentence or a prison sentence.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah. And so like I said, I don't know, I was just called to kind of that community, seeing from my nursing background and everything and the research I did.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That definitely is not something I would think would show up in the ER all that often. But like, I guess as you say that, I could see
Mhm.
how just like severe pain could be a big
Oh, yeah.
plus for those folks.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads to like, tell us a little bit about like what the typical PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome client would present with symptom wise, and then maybe even clients you've worked with that fall outside of that norm, but have either been told they have PCOS or suspect that they do.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. I mean, I see the whole range of symptoms. And the other thing is too, a lot of the symptoms can overlap with other, conditions, thyroid conditions, for example.
Yeah.
But I feel like energy, just chronic fatigue, that's a huge one. Weight, especially around the abdomen,
Mm-hmm.
and feeling like you've tried everything, everything exercise wise, maybe nutrition wise, whatever, to get it to go away or to just make some improvement and it won't go away. Acne, the facial hair, I think those are definitely some of the biggest ones. Um, but yeah, the more I've been like talking, I don't know, I feel like more lately I've been talking to people that have not had the weight issues,
Mm-hmm.
um, but have been told that they've had cysts. And the other funny kind of part of that is they also said, yeah, I was told I had cysts in my ovaries, but I didn't get a diagnosis of PCOS.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, irregular periods, that can be another, either irregular, like I should say, and ovulation. So, not getting their period, but maybe like 9 times a year, I should say.
Yeah.
That could be another thing, or just the heavy bleeding, the irregular symptoms, severe pain with menstruation, that type of thing can be another thing. And I feel like I see more of that in the women that don't have the weight issues, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, so yeah, it can be, those are probably the most common. The big thing is that I've learned, still, always learning, but it is tied to insulin resistance a lot of the times.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. I think that's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the more that we uh, you know, the sugars. I mean, there's so many sugars, I feel like, and I was guilty of it. Like looking back, apparently when I first started working with a functional medicine doctor myself and started having my issues, I didn't really know about insulin, about like insulin levels or I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like it wasn't something that we did, and especially in the ER, of course, but I feel like it just wasn't really taught that much. And so she had done an insulin level on me, and mine was elevated, and I had some insulin resistance going on. And so, looking back as I made some changes, I was eating out quite a bit. I was eating a lot of packaged foods.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like it just kind of becomes a vicious cycle. So, yes, you have a lot of the added sugars and everything
Yeah.
in those, but then there's also a lot of the inflammatory ingredients in there, and that
Mhm.
just kind of feeds the whole cycle as
Yeah.
well. And so, yeah, so the more the more insulin that's needed to lower our blood sugar, can lead to insulin resistance. And the thing is, our bodies compensate for quite a while, right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening. So you're going to get a normal blood glucose, fasting glucose level. You're going to get a normal A1C. A lot of times doctors aren't testing for insulin. They're not testing an insulin level. And if they did, even with those normal, if you're having a lot of those symptoms, more than likely your insulin level could be elevated. And to me, that's kind of the pre-diabetes,
Yeah.
where a lot of times they go by like A1C and stuff for pre-diabetes, but I think testing an insulin level is even more important.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you're just flooding the body with more insulin into the cells and everything to bring those sugar levels down, those glucose levels down. So your numbers are fine there, but it's the insulin that is the one that should really be checked.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you said that because I feel like kind of what we're talking about here, and this applies to even the IBS community, which is the community that's likely out there listening. There could be
Hmm.
potentially quite a bit of crossover with PCOS and IBS, right?
Yeah.
And I can even touch a little bit on my experience with a quasi PCOS diagnosis, but there isn't necessarily with like type 2 diabetes. It's we're kind of talking about this like spectrum that you could potentially be moving towards at any given
Mhm.
moment, and there isn't this like, there is like a critical threshold for like a regular doctor to be like, yes, you meet the criteria, we're going to diagnose you with this. But I think some of these signs, whether it's PCOS or IBS or insulin resistance, you could look quite normal or not really test over the threshold that a doctor might say you have X problem, but your body could very well be moving that direction. And it's that
Mhm.
process that happens over months and potentially
Yeah.
years that,
Yeah.
you and I, as health coaches, want to try to intervene as early as possible when the client's feeling, the
Mhm.
symptoms already, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest things too. I talk about it a lot on my podcast, I feel like too, is your bodies. And I used to tell the people this in the ER all the
Yeah.
time. I'm like, your body. And, and the funny thing is, I knew my body too, but I ignored it. But that's the thing because we kind of ignore it. And so we really have to start listening to what your body is trying to tell you. And so if you're going to the doctor and saying something is off and they're checking all your labs and everything's normal, see it again in a few months, or if anything gets worse, let me know, when
Yeah.
deep down there probably is something else going on there. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't think traditional healthcare is catching a lot of that. And so that's where you have to really, be an advocate for
Yeah.
yourself.
Right. And the good news is, like, even if you can't afford out of pocket testing or don't have access to that specific data, a lot of what obviously this approach, a functional health approach, a
Hmm.
health coaching approach offers is the ability to just start with a solid foundation that has a methodology to it that's shown to just help support the body, right? Like
Exactly.
all across multiple different areas. And I
Yeah.
think that's where going through that process, clients will often be able to have the light bulb go off or get this kind of aha moment where even ones who are, say, active and super fit, like I know for me, one of the big things I didn't know until I came full circle years later and became a practitioner myself was like, part of what set the stage for me was over exercising and under eating. And I believe that truly led to a PCOS like diagnosis I had for a period of time, to the point where I was an ovulatory, right? Like I was not having a
Yeah.
cycle for over a year. And
Yeah.
you think about that in the context of just like nutrient absorption and blood sugar regulation. And it's
Oh my
exactly what you're
gosh.
saying, Lindsay. Like there's almost
Yeah.
always going to be, even if you're active, potentially because of the malabsorption or the malnutrition piece of it, that could be driving insulin resistance and or blood sugar crashes and just
Mhm.
like dysregulation that could be then creating more background inflammation that
Yeah.
switches on those genes of things like PCOS, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, like even just looking back, I mean, I remember there was a period where I think in high school where I don't think I had a period for like a year or so. I mean, it was several months, probably close to a year. And so there was definitely some things
Yeah.
like, and I think that maybe that's part of why, like I said, I do feel called, to the PCOS community too, because I feel like I was headed down that road at
Yeah.
some point, but maybe because I was so active and, did certain things. But there were definitely some signs, big
Oh
signs
yeah.
along the way that I missed.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
hard because I bet like in your case, in mine for sure, like you looked metabolically healthy, right? But like
Hmm.
I remember looking back at old photos of myself in my college years and like I'm like, oh my God, my hair is thinning. I
Yeah.
surely had a thyroid issue then too, kind of back to your point about the thyroid
Yeah.
PCOS connection. So
Yeah.
it does, and this kind of brings up the next question, like based on your experience working with this group of women, how many times do you think this does go missed by a doctor? Say they do go to
Oh
the
my
doctor.
gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's kind of hard to quantify. I mean, the numbers I heard is like I think 12 to 20% that are diagnosed with
Wow.
it. Um, and then even out of those, it's like 80 to 90% are either overweight or obese as
Okay.
well.
Okay. Okay.
But like I said, I mean, I would imagine it's probably closer to 30%, of um, women over the age of 18 at least, that
Yeah.
probably have it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because I feel like so many women that I talk to, there's a tie, there's kind of a clue, at least somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So
Yeah.
tell me kind of what you think the biggest um, struggle these women have. It could even be a misconception, a root cause they think is playing a role, just things that kind of get in the way of them figuring out how to help the body heal.
I think it's all this from every which direction. I mean, I'm in some PCOS groups on Facebook, for example, and it's like one person's trying this, another person's trying this. And the thing is, everybody is so different. I mean, I'm sure you
Yes.
see this a lot, with your practice. Just
Yeah.
because what you did with one person is not going to work for the next person. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like just getting back to the basics is is the thing to do. And that, I mean, that's what I help them do because there's so many, try this supplement, of course, take this medication, drink this tea. There's a lot out there about like spearmint tea with PCOS. And yes, that stuff can complement other things, but if you're not just getting back to the basics and flooding your body with nutrients, because that's like probably that is one of the like foundational concepts that I teach in my 90-day program is actually adding more nutrients instead of
Mhm.
just starting to subtract things,
Yep.
because a lot of times we're lacking in those nutrients. But yeah, just getting back to the basics because stop listening to the noise, because everybody's so different. And don't make it so complicated.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like you're not the first person I've had on the podcast that's really emphasized that whole point. And that's exactly where I stand too. It's like I think there's just this trend in the world of chronic ailments or chronic illness, whether it's PCOS, IBS, you name it, right? Where people are desperate, they're not feeling well, and it's just so easy to latch on to whatever fad supplement is trending that's
Thing.
touted
Yeah.
for, IBS bloating relief or whatever it is for PCOS. And I think a lot of this just hooks into our commercial culture too. Just all of the drug advertising and stuff people are bombarded with. It's like
Yeah,
they don't want a band-aid drug solution anymore. We're seeing this shift away from that, but that
exactly.
thinking around this pill for an ill hasn't shifted from what I've seen so
Yeah.
much, Lindsay. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I think we live in a society where everybody just wants the quick fix. They want the easy way out. They want the quick fix.
Yeah.
You're going to get that, but it's not going to last very long. And,
Exactly.
what I want my people to move on from me. I want them to have sustainable results. I want to teach them, how to really truly heal, or lose the weight and then move on and be able to keep that off and feel that way forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just I think like I said, I think it's a lot of society, it's a lot of the drug commercials. It's I mean, and that's the thing too, seeing in the ER, it was always like I say a band-aid, and you can say that literally or figuratively,
Right.
because it was just the pain pill or whatever, but they would still come back over and over again for the same thing. And I just didn't want to be the one giving out the quick fix anymore.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because like the supplement thing I think is so big for the majority of like health seekers out there. And not that I'm not a fan of supplements. I use them, absolutely use
Mhm.
them in my practice, but and I don't know if you see this, there's so many people that are just so over inundated with them and so overly reliant on them to the exclusion of other things, especially diet and lifestyle
Yeah.
that need to be supporting their health. And I mean, even just today, Lindsay, I was having a conversation with someone who isn't in the functional health space, but is a big fan of supplements and was basically suggesting I incorporate, an IBS supplement line into my practice. And I was just like, no, like philosophically, that doesn't align. And, if
Yeah.
those things were going to fix people, there wouldn't be a need for what you and I do. There wouldn't be all these people struggling because they've tried all
Yeah.
these solutions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to think, what are you supplementing? Are you
Exactly. Exactly.
supplementing just more bad habits and, a poor diet and,
Exactly.
lack of movement?
Yeah.
Yeah, like supplements do serve their purpose. I know for me, like with my clients, like I said, we go back to the basics. And then, yeah, then we can kind of talk about some supplement stuff along the way. But I mean, if you're not doing just the basic things and making those crucial changes to your health, your diet, your lifestyle, the supplements aren't going to do anything. Or again, maybe do something for a little bit, but they're not going to be a long-term solution.
I couldn't even go for a walk without planning my bathroom breaks. If you have IBSD or IBD and feel trapped by your gut, you're not alone. I used to plan my life around bathroom breaks until I found a 3-step solution that finally worked. To get my free guide, IBSD and IBD Relief, a 3-step solution to end bowel urgency and loose stool, click the link in the show notes below.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I've even heard it said over and over again that like the diet, the food we eat is what primarily affects the gut microbiome, right? Which is like all of the bacteria that live in our systems. And
Mhm.
as you know, there's just so much mounting research pointing to how core that is to all kinds of conditions, right? Like as
Oh
a
my gosh.
signaling, community of organisms that can help modulate the immune system, signal different genes, all of that. And I think, once you realize that, you're like, well, gosh, if I have to put more money into eating a really high quality diet or buying another 5 supplements, and God knows what the quality of these things are, or if they're targeted for what I specifically need as an individual, like
Yeah.
it's a no brainer which one I'm going to choose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, and I make that comparison, not necessarily that comparison, but you have to also think too, like, do you want to invest in, yeah, some of these nutrient-rich foods, which unfortunately are more expensive these days.
Yes.
It's crazy. They have one ingredient.
Right.
But, do you want to invest in that, or do you want to invest your time and energy and money in paying for prescriptions and spending your time in doctor's office and fighting with insurance companies and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
No.
ultimately going to cost less. I would argue, you would
Mhm.
argue this too, to like
Yes.
fix the root of it up front. And also it goes faster when you know what to do to get the results faster, right? Which again, there
Yeah.
isn't a silver bullet, but there is a tried and true methodology that again, having somebody who really knows how to guide you appropriately,
Mhm.
that's really kind of what we're talking
Yeah.
about as
Yeah. And
humans.
it's a process. I mean, like I said, looking back, there were years that I had stuff going on. And
Yeah.
so I had to realize it wasn't going to take, a couple nights. It wasn't going to happen
Yeah.
overnight for me to feel better. I had
Yeah.
to really embrace the process. And yeah, there were days where I felt worse before I did feel better.
Yeah.
Um, but you just kind of have to approach it slowly and celebrate all those little, wins along the way too.
For sure. And this is a question of curiosity. It just made me think of this as you're kind of talking here. But like, do you feel like when you're counseling women on PCOS and how to think about it, that you ever find yourself sort of explaining to them that the PCOS is like more secondary to these other deeper root imbalances that we have to really, focus on first, where
Yeah.
kind of similar to weight loss. Like, I feel like I don't do a lot of weight loss predominantly in my practice, but I do have it come up quite a bit. And I'll tell people, like, let's focus less on the weight loss and more on just getting your energy better, getting your diet more nutrient dense, less inflammatory, and just trust that process and the weight loss will come as a result. And it
Mhm.
almost always does. I don't know if that equates to like your population.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So my thing that I tell that I say this about halfway through my 90-day program because they usually have a big eye-opening experience after the first half of the program. And they start realizing that it's really about their health and
Yeah.
weight loss is a side effect of that. And
Yeah.
a lot of people sign up because of the weight loss aspect.
Ah,
It's kind
gotcha.
of it's the fancy term, it's the fun term, it's what everybody talks about. You can actually measure it, right? You
Right.
can't you can't necessarily put a number on, your energy and your mood and
No.
how you're sleeping and all that stuff. Um, and so yeah, it's definitely, and even as I talk to women, like even, before whether they become a client or not, but the why behind it a lot of times has to do with their health. They want to, live to see their kids graduate or be able to play with their grandkids. That's the deep reason
Yeah.
why I work with a lot of women. And so yeah, then along the way, sure, they start really realizing this truly is about my health. And then yes, weight loss just kind of comes along with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Um, in terms of just PCOS and thyroid, I'd be really curious just to have you touch on that for a second because you kind of mentioned it in the beginning, and I feel like thyroid is kind of a hot topic, right? A lot of people are very
Hmm.
interested. Some we're kind of talking weight loss actually right now. So, as you know, there is a thyroid weight loss connection there, and so it might be just interesting for people listening who might have gut symptoms, menstrual symptoms, and suspect they have a thyroid thing going on to hear kind of about that connection, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not like the expert in I actually did a podcast with somebody about this.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we see Hashimoto's with PCOS. And again, going back to what we're talking about with the labs, this
Yeah.
is where the doctor might check like your TSH, your T3, T4, and those might be fine. So a thyroid antibody is a really good one to advocate for. I know there's some other like inflammatory markers and stuff as well, but yeah, the thyroid antibody is a good one, and a lot of the times that can be elevated, as well. Um, and yeah, partially it is because those symptoms do overlap. And so
Yeah.
one could get missed, PCOS could get missed because they're focused on the thyroid issue or, vice versa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I wonder if you would agree that, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I'm just sort of suspecting PCOS is kind of on a similar category spectrum as IBS, where it's probably not by conventional doctors considered technically autoimmune, but if you think about just how so many chronic illnesses more and more are being touted as having these autoimmune tendencies, including
Mhm.
fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, all of those
Yeah.
things, right? Like it would make sense that these secondary autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's or other
Hmm.
things would show up in the context of PCOS or vice versa, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's where those inflammatory, markers come in, like I mentioned, and it kind of just becomes a vicious cycle. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I I even feel like I was taught, I mean, this has been years and years ago, but in
Yeah.
nursing school, but I feel like I was taught that PCOS was an autoimmune condition.
Oh,
And
really?
so I've
Okay.
done even like a few things, a few like I'm saying as far as research, kind of looking into that more because I was like, am I, am I losing it? And this
Yeah.
was like when I was first starting off. And so yeah, I mean when you do the research, there is some kind of questionable like autoimmune. Definitely there are ties to
Mhm.
autoimmune, but ultimately it is saying it's more of a metabolic condition, or a reproductive, type condition.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's definitely a lot of overlap. Like I said, even for, going back to myself, I feel like a lot of those things come in, come in twos.
Yes, yes.
I mean, yeah, again, you probably see it. And the more that I advance in my practice, I am seeing more dual diagnosis with
Yeah.
with PCOS and something else. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also where people are just becoming more interested in a holistic approach because, yes, although these specialists have a place and they're needed for very specific things, the downside of that conventional approach to things is it's very compartmentalized, right? Like if
Oh
you've
my
got
gosh, yeah.
Hashimoto's and PCOS, and let's say you were lucky enough to get a PCOS diagnosis, you can't really talk about the Hashis with the PCOS doctor. I mean, you can and
Yeah.
you can't, you know what I mean, Lindsay? And
Yeah.
some of this is even just billability purposes within the insurance system, which you know very well. It's like
Yes.
you're so constrained in the medical system by what issues and treatments and aspects of a condition are on the table to even work with in any given
Yeah.
moment. And it really hamstrings the client because, as you and I know, like everything is just so connected in the body. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
taking that foundational approach, you can actually impact everything versus being slotted into just this one specific issue you've got, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you hit it right there. I mean, it's again going like I always say I don't like to like I'm not bashing traditional
I
healthcare
know, I know, I know.
because
It's a fine line.
first off there is a time and place for it, especially like in the ER, true emergencies.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it is very specialized. I mean, even hyper specialized in
Yeah.
some instances. And so, I mean, yeah, you could have an endocrine for, especially for, PCOS, you could have an endocrinologist, your OBGYN, your primary care, like that's just
Yeah.
a few, but they're not talking to each other. And I even remember seeing some of this in the ER, especially like I feel like in older people, but they would have a cardiologist and all this stuff and nobody was talking to each other and we always just were like, can we just get on like one big phone call and
Yeah.
have them talk to each other?
Yeah.
um but yeah, I mean it is an unfortunate part of the system, and that's where advocating for yourself and really kind of understanding and also organized, whether you have your labs from one doctor and you have to take them with, I know like a lot of healthcare systems now have like a portal, but even so, that doctor may not know that the other doctor ordered labs or did these other tests or whatever. So you have to be the one to say, I had this done with this doctor, and maybe even just put the results right in front of them.
Totally.
Um, and then just kind of know what questions to ask too, because a lot of times the doctors just say, okay, you got this going on. Here's your prescription, or, we'll do this test and I'll see you in a few months. So you have
Yes.
to also understand like there's side effects to those drugs. There's,
Hmm.
exactly why are we doing this test? Like what's it going to tell us in the end? What's your end goal? Um, yeah, it is unfortunate that the system works like that.
Exactly. And it's definitely like your prerogative as the patient, which sometimes people need a reminder on that, right? Like, and
Mhm.
sometimes I'll even say to my clients, like, remember, the doctor works for you, not the other way around, right?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
think there is something about that hierarchical differential. You feel like the doctor knows everything, you know nothing. It can be very intimidating to be in that type of situation. But I think if you think of it like a classroom and this is the teacher you're engaging with, and it's like there are no stupid questions. And at the end of the
exactly.
day, it's all impacting you anyhow.
Yeah,
So, worst
yeah,
case scenario, the doctor gets angry because you're asking questions, but best case scenario, you're asking these questions, you could literally save yourself from having a major like reaction to a medication or
Yeah.
secondary health issue pop up that you never expected to. So
Yeah.
it is. And I think sometimes this too can be helpful, like working with a health coach that understands the system like you do, Lindsie, right? Like
Yeah.
being able
Yeah.
to kind of coach or help guide clients a little bit as to how to approach some of these things and ask really good questions can also just be a lot of value
Yeah.
because I think people just feel very overwhelmed and like they're kind of trying to tread water and, stay afloat without a lot. And it's hard. There's so much knowledge and time that you could put into learning all this stuff. And this is partly why having
Oh.
somebody to guide you is
Yeah.
such a lifesaver, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think doctors are kind of put on a pedestal still, even though again, I feel like maybe that is shifting a little bit. The one thing I've told people, and I kind of hate to say this, but I'm like, there are doctors that finished last in their class.
It's true. Yes, it's
But
true.
and again, not trying to bash, but just saying like
Yeah.
first of all, yeah, they don't know everything. If I can work with a physician, great.
Yeah.
And hopefully that physician is open to working with me to help their patient.
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, even like my own OBGYN, when I first started telling her that I was working with, women with PCOS, and she was just like, yeah, that can be managed well as long as they just take their meds. And I was like,
Oh
okay,
gosh.
she's not open to a discussion, you know.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, it is. It's unfortunate. It's again, it's part of the breakdown in the system, and you just have to, yeah, you have to know that they don't have all the answers. They're not taught,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to nutrition. I think I heard like 3 days is what they were taught on
If
nutrition
that.
out of,
Yeah.
yeah, out
Yeah.
of however many eight
Years.
plus years, right?
Yeah.
And even that I've heard is like in those nutrition, days, it's they need to whatever be on this diet or eat this for this rare condition.
Right.
It's
Right.
not preventative. It's not, any type of actual healing or maintenance for any condition.
Yeah.
It's more, yeah, if they have this rare thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, I think this kind of goes hand in hand with this whole topic, but like if you understand all this, you also then inherently get that there's limitations to that system and therefore go in with appropriate expectations and knowing
Hmm.
that the doctor might not understand a holistic framework, might not even be
Yeah,
supportive of that because it's like speaking Greek and Latin, right? Like that's just not
exactly.
the training they come out of. And so that at least will empower you to I guess like leverage what you can for what you're getting from that, right? Like if not to say like don't choose to not go to a doctor, but like
Exactly. Yeah.
go in with the understanding that they're going to get you to a point if you really want a holistic approach and get the good out of that, but also understand that like if the system doesn't run the tests you want to run or your doctor's not understanding of those tests or whatever, you can't get
Hmm.
upset there either, right, Lindsie? Because it's just
Yeah.
not set up to do that. And so
Yeah.
that's where having a more, I think, multifaceted perspective and approach to health is really where more and more people need to go if they want these kinds of answers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and if your doctor's not open to having that conversation, then maybe it is time to find another one. There are
exactly.
doctors that are out there that, yeah, they may not know about what we do, but they might be open to you know,
Yeah,
going to, to see other people and work with other people to really help you on your journey and not
yeah,
just they know that whatever they say isn't
yeah,
isn't all the be all end all.
exactly.
They understand and they're open minded to other alternatives that are out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even in the area I live, which is, the Midwest, not necessarily the most progressive area of the US, like there's more and more doctors or nurse practitioners that are now opting out of like hospital systems and going
Yeah.
independent and doing their own cash pay practices, whether
Yes.
they're like membership or pay per appointment type of thing. And most of the time when I've engaged with those folks, they have a lot more open-minded. Like part of the reason they left is because even though they might not want to do like functional medicine and go all the way that direction, like they were having a lot of constraints and frustrations trying to work within that system and felt that
Yeah.
even just doing the regular practicing they wanted to do, it was becoming increasingly difficult. So
Yeah.
even those options, although yes, they are out of pocket or tend to be, they can be a lot times more accessible and accommodating of supporting a holistic approach, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They might be, you can get into insurance issues and that type of thing. So that might be an option as well.
Yeah.
But it really does, it takes a village, it takes a team. If you're
It,
really truly wanting to heal,
yeah.
or reverse a condition, or at least just manage the symptoms better, feel better. Maybe you can't reverse it completely, but you could feel better and have a
Yeah.
better quality of life. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times it is going to take a team, of different specialties and different modalities to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in your experience working with the PCOS crowd of folks, generally speaking, with the right foundational support, is it about 90 days you see it takes on average for people to make a pretty significant transformation, or does it kind of
Yeah.
vary for people on
Well, it does. It varies, but 90 days I feel like is a good gauge. Yeah. I mean, you can definitely make a lot of progress in 90
Yeah.
days. You can also be able to kind of, assess and reassess throughout the time. It's not just 30 days, it's not just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So I feel like a good 3 months is a good gauge. And then, yeah, I have had people that continue beyond the 90 days because they still
Yes.
need work, especially if it comes to weight loss. Again, that's not happening overnight. So, depending on how much weight they have to lose, it could take close to a year
Yeah.
to really get the result that you want.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, yes, 90 days is a great time frame to really make some big changes and really, I help them through the the toughest part of it probably.
Yeah.
Um, and then
Yeah.
I could be there either to maintain that afterwards or still, help them on their journey.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And like I know mine is kind of similar to yours where it's about a 4 month process. And I always try to tell people like this is almost gonna feel a little bit like drinking from a fire hose because part of what I'm doing is teaching you the skills so that eventually you're gonna graduate and not need me anymore, right? Because I
Yeah.
mean ultimately we get into this field to really help people become self-empowered and be able to go out eventually and live a life, independent, knowing what they need to do to keep their health
Yeah.
in order. But like you said, even something like weight loss, there can be a lot of things driving that, and it can sometimes be more complex than it appears at the surface. And
Hmm.
so I found too that that's a good amount of time, 90 days, 120 days, to start to feel like some significant symptom relief and improvements across
Exactly.
different markers. But that's often when people get really, really reinvigorated and more determined to see it through to the end too, because they're like, this is actually working. Like, what happens if I
Exactly.
stick with it another six
Yeah.
months, for example, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Like I said, at that halfway mark, I don't see much weight loss in the first, 45 days or so,
Yeah.
but oh my gosh, so many other changes, especially even like inches, lots of
Yeah.
inches lost in
That's
45 days.
awesome.
The scale may not be moving, which I always tell people, I'm like, that's the last thing we should be looking at.
Right.
How do your clothes fit? What's your energy? How's your sleep? Yeah. Are you losing inches? All those things. Do your rings even fit better? Can you walk up a couple flights of stairs without being out of breath? That type of thing. There's so much in those, even just like I said, the first half, and then usually the weight loss on the scale
Yeah.
comes more during the second half because we've focused so much on their health the
Yeah.
first half, and of course, then yes, we continue that, but then that's where a lot of the corrections are made, and then we see the weight loss during the second half of the program.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that is a very sound approach for the people listening, right? Like weight loss should not be like if you're seeing things advertised like lose 7 pounds in 7 days, like no, not a good idea, right? Like
Yeah,
it should
yeah.
be a gradual, what we're talking about is more of a realistic approach to regaining health that isn't going to
Hmm.
be a false promise that's giving you this extreme result in a very short period of
Exactly.
time. Such a
Yeah,
thing doesn't
yeah.
exist, right?
Yeah, it's a process. And I mean, I
Yeah.
think even like that's probably the biggest like feedback that I get from I think every single one of my clients has been, yeah, there's a little apprehension at first,
Yeah.
but once they start like seeing the process to it, they love it. Like that they're like, without that, it's week by week. we're not looking to the end right away. We're not looking 2 weeks out. We're working even day by day, week by week, and
Yeah.
focusing on just, the next meal in front of us, really. And they said that, like, yeah, they just love that process as we add and then, yeah, start subtracting some things.
I love it. No, that's a really, really awesome approach. So you have a summit coming up here very shortly. So I'd love for you to talk about that because I think people are going to be super interested in this.
Yes, yes. So yeah, it's called Unwritten, Healing Beyond Your Diagnosis. So ties in nicely. And it's about writing the story that the doctor never told you was possible.
Mm,
I even get chills as I say
I love it.
that. Because yeah, for me, as I mentioned, that was definitely for me. I mean, I can only imagine if I would have gone to a traditional, doctor, like what the rabbit hole we could have gone down that way and the medications I probably would have ended up on. But yeah, so for me and all of the speakers that are going to be part of it, they've all been through a diagnosis and now they are coaching and helping others heal, learning from their own journey, yourself included.
Yes, I will be featured on the speakers panel, so I'm
Yes.
excited for
So
that.
yeah, it's 3 nights and it's over 3 weeks. So they're all Thursdays. It's October 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd. And it's from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have two speakers each of those nights with some Q&A as well with each of the speakers. So you also get to ask some questions and interact with them and we'll have some fun. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
And so this would be for people who are really interested in a holistic approach, suspect that diagnoses or things have gone missed by their doctor, and really just want to take that next step and figure out what tools can empower them to get the answer they're looking for, right, Lindsie?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. They're going to be able to walk away with some very tangible, actionable things from all of the speakers. And just also know that there's hope out there, like myself, you, the other speakers, and there's many, many more people out there, of course, that are doing stuff like us that have healed beyond a diagnosis. And so whether it doesn't even matter whether you've had a diagnosis or you're just like, hey, something's off. Like we were talking about, in the beginning, something just feels off. Doctor
Yeah.
says everything's fine. I have these symptoms. Then yeah, join us because I think it could still be very empowering and very helpful for somebody like that. So if you're looking to move beyond the quick fixes, then
Yeah.
definitely this is for you.
Perfect. And I'm going to put the link for people to register in the show notes. I don't know if you mentioned this, but it is a free summit, correct, Lindsie?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is free.
Yep.
We do have a VIP option, which will include some exclusive bonuses that you'll receive from each of the speakers as well. So all those details will be in that link. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Good. So if this interests you, please click the link and get on there because get some spots before. I mean, I don't think it'll fill up, but still, we want you in the summit and engaged, and we love questions. So
Hmm.
that it'll be a really fun event. I'm super
Yeah.
excited to support you on that. Well,
Yes. Thank
good.
you.
Well, we should actually share how people can reach you too before we close out today. What's the best way to reach you,
Yeah.
Lindsie?
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, I do have a podcast as well, and that is called PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, Heal, Thrive. So if you just search for PCOS Unfiltered on all of the major platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, all those, then you'll find me there. Otherwise on Facebook, yeah, Facebook, just my personal is Lindsie Vizethann. Um, we'll put that in there because that's
We'll put that
spelling
in
and the
there
whole
too.
thing.
It's gonna be hard for people to know how to spell
Yeah. And
that.
then Instagram is healthy_ever after 15 if you want to connect with me there as well.
Perfect, perfect. We'll link your socials in the show notes so people can
Yeah.
click on that and then connect with you. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. I have so enjoyed this conversation. I think it was fun just to even dive in a little bit and distinguish between the conventional holistic side of things for people that might not be aware of some of those things.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is going to be a blast. I'm looking forward to the summit and thank you again for coming on, Lindsie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.